The radio crackled at 2:17 a.m., right as I leaned over the catwalk to check the intake pressure. Not dispatch, not Wade, just a wet, calm voice slipping through the static. "Don't take it all. We're still down here." I froze, fingers locked around the cold railing. Below me, the pumps roared like chained animals, drawing thousands of gallons of river water out of what used to be a town. The sound never stopped here, day or night, just a constant grinding pull, like the earth being forced to breathe through steel lungs. I clicked the radio off and stood there longer than I should have, staring at the dark water pooled between buildings. I told myself it was interference, old lines. Flood zones always messed with signals. That's what this place was now, a flood zone. 3 weeks earlier, the dam upriver failed after days of rain, and the river didn't just spill, it climbed. When the water finally went down, it left the town half-drowned, sealed in mud and silence. FEMA called it a recovery site. We called it easy money. But it didn't look recovered. Boats were still tied to stop signs. Water lines ringed every building at chest height, like the town had been dipped and held there. Windows stared back at me, black and reflective, as if they were watching the pumps work. Wade told me not to linger on the catwalk at night. "Sound carries weird here," he said, "especially after dark." I didn't ask what he meant. None of us asked many questions anymore. Earlier that evening, the county sheriff met us at the staging lot. He looked like he hadn't slept since the flood, eyes red, uniform stained with silt that never quite washed out. He gave us one instruction that wasn't in the contract. "After sundown," he said, "don't go inside the high school or the nursing home." "Because they're unstable?" someone asked. The sheriff shook his head once. "Because sometimes you'll hear people." I laughed then. Nobody else did. Now, alone on the catwalk with the pumps screaming beneath me, I thought about that radio transmission, about how the voice didn't sound panicked, didn't sound afraid. It sounded patient. And somewhere below the surface, the water shifted, slow and deliberate, as if something had just noticed we were there. Day shift made everything feel almost normal again. Sunlight cut through the low fog, and from a distance, the town looked like any other cleanup site. Dump trucks, orange cones, crews in reflective vests moving between buildings. You could almost forget that just a few feet below the streets, water still filled basements and crawl spaces like dark pockets the pumps couldn't quite reach. Almost. By mid-morning, the intake filters started clogging. At first, it was leaves, branches, scraps of insulation, exactly what you'd expect after a flood. Then the screens began pulling up pale, stringy clumps that didn't look like plant matter at all. Long, soft fibers tangled together, slick and faintly translucent, like someone had shredded wet paper towels and left them to soak. Wade poked one with a screwdriver. "Algae bloom, maybe?" he muttered. The thing twitched. Not much, just a faint tightening like it was shrinking from the metal. Nobody laughed after that. We bagged the debris and swapped the filter, but the next one came up worse. More mass, thicker strands, and the smell, sweet and coppery like stagnant blood diluted with river water. By afternoon, the pumps started making a different sound. Not louder, deeper, like something inside the pipes was resisting the flow. Pressure readings spiked even though the water level was dropping. When I mentioned it to Wade, he stared at the gauge longer than necessary before lowering his voice. "This town didn't just flood," he said. "Water came up through storm drains, basements, wells. Folks said it rose out of the ground like it was looking for air." I asked him why he'd taken the contract if he believed that. He didn't answer. At dusk, I was sent to check a row of houses where the water had finally dropped below the front steps. Mud coated everything in a smooth gray skin, and my boots made soft sucking sounds with every step. That's when I heard the knocking. 3 slow taps, coming from inside one of the houses. I stood there, heart thudding, telling myself it was debris shifting, pipes contracting, anything but what it sounded like. Then it came again, same rhythm, steady and deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I raised my radio before I remembered the sheriff's rule about going inside after dark. The knocking kept time with the distant thrum of the pumps, like whatever was in there could hear them too. And it was answering. By the 3rd night, everyone was on edge. The pumps were working around the clock now, and the streets were finally starting to show. Cracked asphalt, toppled mailboxes, a playground twisted into the side of a building like it had been thrown there. But even as the water went down, it felt wrong to say the town was clearing out. It felt like something was being uncovered. Wade sent me to check a storm drain near the old grocery store where water kept pooling no matter how much we pulled. The grate was bent inward like it had been hit from below. When I shined my flashlight down, I expected to see leaves or collapsed piping. Instead, I saw ripples. The water was moving against the flow, swirling slowly in tight circles, like it was circling a drain that didn't exist. I radioed it in. Dispatch told me to mark the spot and move on. As I turned back toward the pumps, a woman was standing near the barricade tape at the edge of the work zone. I hadn't seen her approach. She was soaked to the knees, carrying a grocery bag stuffed with white candles, the kind you see at roadside memorials. "When you drain it," she said quietly, "it gets hungry." I asked her what she meant. She shook her head. "Doesn't matter. You already woke it." Before I could respond, she glanced toward the nursing home down the street and whispered, "Have you heard them yet?" Then she walked away, leaving wet footprints that filled slowly with muddy water. That night, I dreamed I was walking through town with the streets completely dry. Storefronts were lit, porch lights glowed warm and steady. It almost looked normal. Then I realized every window was full of water, not spilling out, just pressed flat against the glass, sloshing gently at chest height. And behind it, faces drifting in the dark, bumping softly into each other like balloons tied to invisible strings. I woke up to my radio hissing. No voice this time, just breathing, slow, wet, right in my ear. The call came just after midnight. We were pulling debris near the intersection by the pharmacy when the radio crackled and a weak, shaking voice cut through the static. "I'm in the blue sedan," it said. "It's cold. Please, I can't feel my legs." Every head turned toward the flooded side street. There was a blue sedan there, half buried under collapsed fencing and tree limbs, its windows blown out by the surge. We'd checked it 2 days earlier. There had been no body inside, just a wallet and photos scattered across the seats, soaked and curling at the edges. The voice on the radio said my name. That's when I knew we weren't dealing with interference. Wade told us to stay put, but I was already moving, following the sound toward a basement stairwell behind the pharmacy where black water still pooled thick and unmoving. The radio signal grew clearer the closer I got, like it was waiting. "I'm right here," the voice whispered. "Just under you." My flashlight shook as I aimed it at the water. For a second, the surface was still. Then a handprint pressed up from below, pale and perfectly shaped, flattening against the underside of the water like someone trapped beneath glass. I staggered back, slipped in the mud, and Wade grabbed my vest, hauling me away from the stairs. "We shut the pumps down," he said, voice hoarse. "Just for an hour. Let it settle." Management refused. The contract clock was ticking, and every delay cost money. So we powered the pump bank back up. The intake filter blew outward with a sound like a body hitting a wall. Something tore through the metal screen, forcing itself into the pipe in thick, twisting strands, jamming the blades until the motor screamed and died. Whatever it wasn't debris. It was trying to come with the water. And now that it knew our voices, it didn't need the radio anymore. After the pump failure, they finally let us into the municipal building to find the manual override maps. Inside, the air smelled like wet paper and old rust. Files were plastered to the walls where the flood had glued them there, peeling and sagging like shed skin. Someone had dragged furniture into doorways, not to block water coming in, but to block something from getting out. At the end of the hall, we found a steel door marked Aquifer Access, authorized personnel only. It was chained shut, but the chain had been cut long ago. Beyond it, a concrete tunnel sloped downward, old and narrow, with pipes running along the ceiling that hummed faintly even when the pumps were off. Chalk markings covered the walls, dates, arrows, and the same warning written over and over in different handwriting. Do not drain it fast. Do not let it dry. It wakes in air. The tunnel opened into a maintenance chamber where a massive floodgate had been forced open and jammed with twisted metal. Through the opening, the ground dropped away into a natural cavern the size of a gymnasium, and the water down there wasn't still. It moved in slow, rolling pulses, thick and heavy, rising and falling like something breathing beneath a blanket. Not waves, not currents. Muscle. Wade whispered, "It's been here a long time." I realized then why the town flooded so fast. The dam didn't just fail. Something underneath had been waiting for pressure to break. We started to run when the radio went off again, not with a single voice this time, but many, overlapping, pleading, calling for help, using names pulled from our crew roster, from emergency logs, from somewhere deep and dark where memories shouldn't survive. And as we climbed back toward the street, I felt the floor tremble. The water wasn't staying underground anymore. Once the water level dropped below the sidewalks, that's when it really started hunting. Not as one thing, as many. Every puddle became a doorway, every storm drain a throat. We lost Hernandez first. He stepped off the curb into what looked like a shallow sheet of runoff and vanished without a splash, like the street had opened and closed around him. One second he was there, the next, there was only his dropped flashlight spinning in place, beam cutting useless circles across wet pavement. The radios went wild after that, not with panic from the crew, but with voices from everywhere else. Children crying from empty houses, elderly men calling from storm drains, familiar voices asking us to come closer, to help, to listen. It didn't matter if you turned your radio off. The voices carried through the pipes, through the streets, through the soles of your boots. I ran for the pub platform, slipping on slick concrete, knowing if I could just kill the remaining pumps, maybe it would slow down. Maybe it wouldn't be able to move as easily without the pressure and flow helping it along. Halfway there, something rose in the middle of the intersection. Not a creature, not a body. A human shape made of water pulled itself upright for a few terrible seconds, arms sagging, face barely formed before collapsing back into the street like a lung exhaling. That's when I understood. It wasn't pretending to be us. It was learning how. I reached the control panel as the ground shuddered beneath me, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the switches. The radios screamed with my own voice, begging me to stop, to wait, to come back. I slammed the main breaker down. The pumps died, and for just a moment, the town went quiet. Too quiet. When the pumps shut down, the water didn't rush back in, it just settled. The streets stayed damp, coated in thin sheets and dark stains like the town had been sweating instead of drowning. Whatever had been moving beneath the surface went still, not gone, just waiting. At sunrise, FEMA supervisors rolled in with clean boots and clipboards, acting like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. They called the operation sufficiently stabilized and told us the remaining flooding would be handled by natural evaporation. No one mentioned Hernandez. No one mentioned the voices. The sheriff met my eyes once as they packed up the equipment. He looked tired but not surprised. "We warned you not to take it all," he said quietly. "It needs water. It needs air. You gave it both." They had me sign release forms, incident reports, equipment damage statements, everything except a missing persons report. Then they told me I was cleared to leave. I drove until the town disappeared in my mirrors. At the first gas station out on the highway, I went to wash the mud off my hands. In the bathroom mirror, I saw a faint gray line across my neck, like a receding watermark that hadn't quite faded. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Voicemail, time-stamped for tomorrow. When I played it, I heard my own voice, thin and wet, whispering through the speaker. "Don't take it all. We're still down here." And somewhere, miles behind me, a town that should have been empty finally learned how to breathe. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to leave a like and let me know what you thought down in the comments. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know which kinds of stories you want more of. And if you want more long-form horror about forgotten towns, strange jobs, and the things that wait in the dark when no one's supposed to be there, subscribe to Campfire Horror Stories and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. Because some places don't stay empty. Some disasters don't end when the water goes down. And some towns are still breathing, long after everyone else has left. Good night, and I'll see you in the next story.